The following presentation was recorded at the 2025 Southeast Linuxfest in Charlotte, North Carolina. It is licensed under a Creative Commons license. For more information on the Southeast Linuxfest, visit www.southeastlinuxfest.org. Come join us next June.
All right. So, as you can see, this is Hey Mycroft, v1.5-popey. So kind of a semantic versioning play on words. Version 1.5 is because it's not actually the Mycroft project, and there are some quirks that are currently implemented with the Home Assistant stuff that I don't really consider it like a 2.0 yet. So that's why I did 1.5. And then Popey is actually the nickname for Allan Pope, who's part of the Ubuntu podcast and the Linux Matter podcast. So we're going to use his voice to speak out of the Home Assistant box that's up here, which you can see is glowing in this like warmish light. So we're going to do essentially a whole Home Assistant install and go ahead and pair this to Home Assistant. The slides, these are the links for the slides. There's a live version that you can follow along and click the links and stuff. I'll also have a blog post linked at the end that'll have the links for these as well. There we go. All right, so who am I? This is my slide on who I am. I've been in the IT security field for 7 years. Whenever I'd go to conference talks in the past, there's a lot of people that always said, oh, I've been here for 30 years and stuff. So since I'm still kind of newer, I still try to like educate and try to get people to realize you don't have to be in the industry for a long time to be able to give these kinds of talks. So I work at Secure Ideas as a penetration tester, operations, and developer. Developer is more whenever I get the itch and time to scratch something, because most of my time is taken up with penetration testing and operations. But this is more of a home lab talk and kind of more of my community things. So Professionally Evil is our open source moniker for Secure Ideas. So I've done some of the projects, worked with some of the projects for my company through Professionally Evil, as well as in the local Charlotte area, there's a 49th Security Division that I was a part of whenever I was in college. All right, so there's a lot going on up here. So I took a picture and showed it up there so that way it's a little bit easier for you guys to follow along. So just to kind of start going over the hardware a little bit, the Home Assistant Preview Edition, which is this little white box right here in the picture, and as I pointed to up here already. Then we've got a GLI net, which is like a little mini router device, which is right here. But in the picture, it's right here. And that's to create kind of like a little local network, so that way I don't have to worry about trying to connect all my devices to the conference network and fiddle around with that, because you do need a network and can join things through the network, so that's important. And then lastly, I'm using the System 76 Servo workstation, which is my laptop right here. And that's like my targeted server. The reason why I'm using it is because it has an NVIDIA GPU. My work actually got this, and it's now been decommissioned by my work, so I've been using this because it's a little bit more powerful, but you don't need very much to run it. Mainly just a Home Assistant server. So the software, like I've mentioned a few times now, will need Home Assistant. And I actually have a playbook with an Ansible playbook that has all of the things that get configured automatically, which is what I'm going to be doing the demo with today. So you don't have to worry about trying to manually install this yourself. It's all handled inside of the playbook. So we got Home Assistant, and then we've got Ollama, which is a project that you can use to locally host large language models, and it exposes an API. But we're specifically using Llama 3.2, the Tools edition. There are newer versions of LLMs out there, but I had pinned it to the 3.2 one just so that way I can make sure everything worked for my demo. So we're going to be using the Tools version, which specifically the Tools version is like a specific schema of like an API, so that way it's a known interface for other automations to interact with it. I'm not super familiar with this. There's a lot of other talks out there that talk about LLMs and other things like that, but this is kind of just high level some of the things that we're going to be using. And then we're going to be using the Raspy project, which specifically in their GitHub repos, they have the Wyoming protocol. And Wyoming is essentially a protocol that gets leveraged by Home Assistant that you can just use in their web UI for Home Assistant to install the Wyoming protocol plugin. And then you configure everything through that. And specifically for the Wyoming protocol, we're going to be using Whisper CPP, which is Whisper C++ for the speech to text. So that's whenever you actually speak to the device, it'll go ahead and converse and interact with you and translate your speech to text. So that way it can pass it on to a llama and be able to interact with the text that you're actually speaking. And then we've got Piper, which is text to speech. So once there's the response from a llama, it gives generated text. And then that gets converted to actually speech, into actual like words. And specifically, we're going to be doing Allan Pope, his voice. This talk isn't going to cover open wake word, but for example, like Alexa devices and other things say, hey, Alexa. In this instance, we're going to be doing Hey Mycroft, which is kind of paying homage to the Mycroft project, which was discontinued, just because I had always wanted a Mycroft device, but never had enough money to get it whenever I was in college. But you can make your own wake words and train your own wake words, and I haven't done that, but I have some resources at the end for people that have done it. And then to bring all of this together, we're going to be using Docker containers. And specifically, we've enabled NVIDIA GPU compatibility for these Docker containers. So that'll help us accelerate the large language model via a llama to make things a little bit faster. Whisper itself can use GPU, but unfortunately, the whole Raspy project integration with Wyoming with Home Assistant doesn't have that functionality enabled yet. In my blog post, I linked to the specific issue, so whenever they do merge it, that should get closed out, and you can readjust your Home Assistant deployment. But for right now, the Whisper.cpp is just the C++ version, which leverages the CPU instead of the GPU, which makes things a little bit slower. But overall, it's better than not at all. So lots of words. Now I'm going to kind of give a little bit of visualizations to just kind of talk through how we're going to be doing the demos. So I've got kind of three different groupings here. So we've got the router, which we've talked about is the GLINet device. And then we've got the Home Assistant preview. And then this big white box indicates the laptop that's running everything. So the initial pairing of the Home Assistant preview device actually happens over Bluetooth. So the device is nearby, and you can actually either do it from the actual server itself, or you can also do it from your phone. I actually, the first time I did it through my phone, and there's a specific version, which I have linked in the blog post, that you need to make sure your Home Assistant is a newer version of. And I find that out the hard way because I was literally debugging and like looking through all the logs. I'm like, why is this not working? Apparently there was a bug with the integration that they used for the auto discovery whenever you use the Home Assistant app, and then your Home Assistant server version had to be a specific version. So it took me about 30 minutes to figure that out, which I was not proud of, but I eventually found it, and newer versions of Home Assistant should work no problem. So if you're just getting up and running, and specifically this demo will have the newer version that is compatible with it. So once we get the Wi-Fi creds passed over Bluetooth, it then sends those creds to the Home Assistant preview, and then that actually connects to the Wi-Fi network that it's trying to join the network for. And then afterwards, the Home Assistant instance will be able to do the auto discovery to find the device on the network. And you can add it just like any other ESP device that's on the network. So that's the joining process. And then this is kind of high-level overview of what a conversation would look like. So you say, hey, Mycroft, and then it would activate the device. And then you have your question of what time is it? And so you say that, and then the Home Assistant Preview Edition captures the audio, and it sends it off to Home Assistant through the Home Assistant URL, which I also found out the hard way because I have a separate IoT network at home from like my server network, and I don't let them communicate by default. But you have to expose that Home Assistant URL for your the Home Assistant Preview device, or else it won't be able to connect and send that audio to your Home Assistant instance. And that's just, for me, it was 443, but it's whatever your Home Assistant URL is. So it sends that raw audio to Home Assistant, and then Home Assistant goes and takes that to the speech-to-text Whisper, and Whisper goes ahead and converts that raw audio into text, which then gets sent back through the Wyoming protocol through to Olama. And then Olama reads in that question. It then generates a response for the Home Assistant Preview Edition to respond with. And then that gets sent back through Wyoming over to Piper, which is the text-to-speech. And so it'll use whatever voice you've pre-programmed to go ahead and generate the actual raw audio to send back and then respond to your question. That gets sent back through Wyoming and then all the way back to the Home Assistant Preview Edition, which says the time. So lots of moving parts, which is why I kind of wanted to create like a demo and just kind of high-level show a visualization of what everything looks like. All right, so hopefully the demo gods are in my favor. Let's see, go ahead and minimize this. All right, so to help with consistency and ensuring that my demo would work, I use a project called devenv. Long story short, it uses the Nix programming language to kind of like make everything static in the environment. But I created a devenv shell so that way I can make sure everything works correctly. And so you don't have to do it this way, but this is just how I'm doing the demo in case anyone was interested in wondering why I'm starting up a Podman container and other things like that. So we'll go ahead and do 2 because we want to do the Mycroft project. And so this is the SSH command that I'm running to copy over my SSH key, so that way everything is done over SSH keys instead of passwords. And it's asking me to accept the fingerprint for the remote host. So I type yes, and then I type the super secure password. And it went ahead and installed my SSH key. And now it's preparing to start the Ansible run. And I'm using a tool called UV, which goes ahead and installs all the dependencies and pins everything. So that way it can make sure that it's running the exact version of Python and their dependencies. And then once it activated, it went ahead and started installing the Ansible collections, and roles, which are the different things that essentially get used through the playbook to make things not have to be as verbose and complex. Essentially think of it as like a function or a shell script that you invoke. So these are just kind of wrappers around that. And then type in the super secure password again. I actually did cheat a little bit, I will say, because some of these Docker images are very large. And so I pre-cached some of them. And I will show you the host really quick, just so that way you can see what exact commands I ran. So history command. So I pre-installed Docker because I wanted to pull down the Docker containers. And then I ran this printf command. You don't actually have to do this, but it takes a long time to pull down those containers. And I didn't know if I was going to get rate limited because of people pulling down containers for demos here. So I went ahead and just did a Docker pull here. And so that way it pulled down all of the images. And then I also created the Home Assistant Olama directory and rsynced over the Llama, the Olama and Llama model. So that way it was kind of pre-cached as well. Like I said, you don't have to do all of this, and the playbooks should essentially skip over this since it's cached. I also applied all of the updates for the Ubuntu server. So that way it didn't take very long for the update process. So this playbook should say everything is okay because all of the updates have been applied, and hopefully there are no more updates since this morning. Okay. So it went ahead and made sure that the laptop doesn't go to sleep since I have the lid closed, and now it's going ahead and doing all the other provisioning. Initially, it's just modifying SSH so that way I can use public key auth only instead of passwords. As a security person, I try to advocate for more security things, so that's why I did that. This part I figured was going to take a little while. So during the installation process, I didn't install the NVIDIA kernels or the NVIDIA drivers, so that way I could use this playbook to go ahead and make sure that everything is provisioned in the playbook. So now it's downloading and installing the NVIDIA drivers. Let's see. Go ahead and get an SSH over here. And then SCP, UVX, SCP, SSH. Still installing. We'll pull this up over here. .uvx glances. Let's see. Oops. Let's CPU that over as well. I did not think it was going to take this long. Let's see. Check my network really quick. So UV is the Python dependency manager I had mentioned, and I just launched the glances, which helps us see what processes are running. Yeah, so it's not a resources thing, it's just the conference network. I think I see the problem. I have my VPN on, which slows things down. So let's kill that. And since it's a playbook, we can just rerun it again, and everything should execute as expected. And hopefully this will be faster now that we're not on the VPN anymore. I have a video in case this does not work as expected, but I was really hoping that the live demo works. So I will make sure that the video is prepared just in case. the not so glamorous parts about demos. Come on, NVIDIA, don't screw me over. Videos, recordings, yesterday, there we go. Alright, it looks like it probably finished installing and is now building the kernel modules, so that should be quicker since it's all local. So hopefully it should be finishing up very soon. I can also pull up the presentations, the Ansible playbook to talk through what it's doing. NVIDIA. So, ooh, that is very tiny. There we go. All right, so at this part, it has reached the NVIDIA role, which is actually maintained by NVIDIA. So this is the whole part of the Ansible Galaxy installation that was happening before. And with that, it actually installs it almost like a package from a repository or something like that. And it's pinned so that way it should consistently work. So Ansible installs that and goes ahead, and NVIDIA has outlined all of the different steps that they think are needed for their driver. So they unload the Nouveau driver and then start configuring things from inside of that role. And all I have to do is include this import role line in my Ansible playbook, and it installs all of the NVIDIA driver stuff for me. By default, I think it uses like the latest driver version, but based off of my specific Ubuntu version, 5 and graphics card 570 was the one that was recommended. So I specifically told it, hey, give me the 570 version. And then afterwards, it goes ahead or I configure it to install the NVIDIA Container Toolkit. And this is what actually enables you to run NVIDIA drivers inside of the Docker containers. So that allows it to have GPU enablement and the expediency for Olama. So I configure the repository here with all of the information that NVIDIA provided. And then it updates the repos, so that way it pulls in the new repository that I just deployed, and then installs the NVIDIA Container Toolkit. And that does the actual configuration of Docker and handling of the Docker containers to interact with the NVIDIA graphics card. So then I go through and I use Geerling Guy's Docker role, and I install, yes, that's one of them. Progress. Goes ahead and installs Docker, which, because Docker's already installed, it should not do very much. And then I add my TARS user, which is, TARS is a robot on, now I'm spacing on the movie. Interstellar, yeah, there we go. TARS is the robot for Interstellar, and Endurance was one of the ships, and so I was kind of going with I think I saw it last month or something like that, and it seemed pretty cool, so I just went with Interstellar theme. So then I configure Docker to go ahead and use the NVIDIA container runtime. The system is now rebooting after it installed all of the NVIDIA drivers, and so then it'll reboot and load back up with the new NVIDIA drivers installed. And then lastly, I install the Docker Python package on the remote host, so that way it can handle deploying the actual containers, which gets handled in this playbook, deploy containers. And so with this, I make sure that the base OS has some other dependencies that it needs for loading up the Bluetooth interaction for Home Assistant. So whenever you install these, it actually enables the bare metal host to interact with the Bluetooth of the host. So that way you're essentially able to pass through the Bluetooth from the host into the Docker container. And then this is just creating the Home Assistant folder, which it should say okay for that. Let's see. Yep, so that's closed, and it should be rebooting. Yeah, guy. Okay. Yep, there it goes. Hadn't moved for a little while, so I just wanted to check and make sure everything was still going. All right, so went ahead, and as you can see, it doesn't have to install Docker because I already did that. But then it makes sure that the Docker daemon is using NVIDIA. And then now it's gotten into this playbook where it's actually deploying the containers. So deploying, which is the step right here. So it already transferred over the Docker file, which everything is in the repository, so you can check that out later. And then it goes to actually deploying the compose file. So this is using the community's plugin for Docker Compose, to where you can essentially just provide the directory for Home Assistant or for the Docker file and go ahead and essentially run a Docker up or Docker Compose up. And so it automatically goes ahead and deploys the containers, which we should be able to check on in this window. So now you can see the Docker Compose file here. All right. And so everything should be deployed now. So we pop this window up over here, which is the browser. And there we go. All we had to do was navigate to the IP address of the host, :8123, and we have a fully configured Home Assistant. Well, fully deployed Home Assistant. Now we're going to go through the configuration process. So name is, what was it? Cooper Station was what I wanted to use, which was one of the ships that they ended up doing. And then Murph was his daughter. So we'll do Murph and super secure password again. All of this is on my local network, so you can't even try and think about accessing it. All right, so we'll create the account and not set the location, United States. Since this is just ephemeral, we're not going to do that. All right, so then we finish. We go over here to settings, devices and services, and you can see that it's already picked up on the Home Assistant preview. And that's all because of the Bluetooth connection and access to that. All right, and then before we do that though, we're going to do install the Wyoming protocol. And that is going to be all of the various services that we just deployed, which is the Piper, which is this one, which is just localhost and then port 1200. And you can see successfully created for Piper for Wyoming. And then we do add services for open wake word. There's open wake word. And then we've got Whisper CPP. And there's create a config for Whisper CPP. All right, and then we'll go back to integrations and do the llama integration. And the URL for that is just the local host again, since everything is self-contained. And you can see that llama 3.2 latest has already been downloaded. So hopefully it shouldn't do any download. Yes, okay. There we go. And so all of that is necessary for us to configure the Home Assistant Assist settings, which is the voice assistant. So with that, we're going to do Allan as the name because of Allan Pope. We're going to use llama 3.2. We're not going to prefer local. You can do this, but I've had mixed results with its performance whenever it responds to things. So you can also actually change the prompt that gets sent along as well. I'm not going to touch it for right now, but if you've done any type of prompting or interactions with LLM, you can know that it's all up to the prompt and how well the prompt is crafted. So the built-in one is pretty good, but just something that you can know is there. And then the speech to text, we're going to do Whisper CPP. And then text to speech, we're going to do Piper. We're going to change it to ENGB because that's where Allan Pope's voice is at. And then we're going to choose a higher fidelity of medium instead of low. All right, so we do that. So we've created that assist in Home Assistant, and then we set it as preferred. And after that, we go ahead and configure the Home Assistant Preview Edition. So we've got this. This is my device. I can click Add. And it auto-discovered this because it already has the Bluetooth plugin for the laptop, and it has all of those dependencies that I had mentioned that are pre-installed on the host. So that's why it was able to auto-discover this. So we can do this. And it'll ask me for the SSID of my GLI net and the password. And this one is actually long and secure, so good luck. One thing to note is that it only works over 2.4 gigahertz from my understanding. So if you have a dedicated 5 gigahertz network, you'll need to make sure that it's using the 2.4 instead of 5. So now it says the device requires authorization. Press its authorization button or consult the device's manual on how to proceed. The authorization button is just the center button. So you push the center and it says the device is connecting to the Wi-Fi network. So once that gets connected, you should see it stop the white light, and it is now a blue light, which says that the device is successfully connected to the Wi-Fi network. And you hit close, and so now it's automatically discovered the Home Assistant voice edition over the network itself. So the blue means that it's connected to Wi-Fi, but it's not actually connected to your Home Assistant yet. So it's prepared to be added to the Home Assistant, which all you have to do is hit add, and it'll auto-discover the ESP or auto-install the ESP Home integration as well. So all I have to do is hit submit, and well, it was going to ask me about I don't know if you can. Long story short, it just did a ding da ding to let you know that it has successfully connected. We'll come back to this, but it was going to ask me about location for the device, and it went away. The location is important because, well, all right. whatever. The location's important. I think by default it just ends up using the bedroom. They've changed this process a little bit. So this is the initial like walkthrough tutorial that they have. So you can say these words right here, which I'm not going to say yet because I want to change the wake word to "Hey Mycroft," and it just heard me. So it said, "Say it again." So "Hey Mycroft." There we go. And there we go. There's the area. Okay, so it's important where you place this in your home because if you have automations that are local to that room, you don't have to say in XYZ bedroom or in XYZ room. So it can try to figure out some of the the devices in your Home Assistant, but it's not the best at it. And it typically would be like, well, I found it over here. Do you want me to use that? So it's still, this is why I said it was a 0.5 version bump. I don't want you talking yet. You're jumping ahead in the tutorial. All right, so that's why I'm just choosing bedroom because there's not really any other devices in this network. So this is a few of the different options that you can have for just using the assist in Home Assistant. Home Assistant Cloud, we're not doing that because we're only doing local stuff. So we're doing the fully local, and this continues to have this issue. So I've always, on my normal installation, I think it's because this is an over HTTPS, it doesn't do that. It actually successfully completed. But with that, everything should be getting used. So you can see the wake word is "Hey Mycroft," and then you see that it lights up and, well, "Hey Mycroft, what time is it?" And of course, because I cut it off, it's now upset with me. "Hey Mycroft, what time is it?" And so it's blinking with a blue light to indicate that it's processing. And then we'll see if it can respond.
Time is 14:38:33.
And there we go. You can talk to your Home Assistant Preview Edition, and it can have small requests that it can do. Normally, it's not using Allan Pope's voice. Let's see. So this is, you can choose different voices and stuff, but because of this talk, I was just doing Allan Pope's voice, which is the voice that you just heard respond. All right, so that is the demo. Get back to the slides really quick. Here we go. So those are the two demos, the actual provisioning and the voice. And so here are some extras that I've found useful. Because periodically it gets a little buggy, I've actually set an Android widget on my phone to have it be easily restartable. By default, that is not configured in Home Assistant, and these are the steps for actually enabling it. It's a little hard to see. Let's see if that helps at all. Not really. I think I can, there we go. So that is actually going to the device. You know what, I'm just gonna do it directly on the device so that you guys can see it. So we go here and you see underneath the configuration, it shows you these two entities, and then you click on the restart entity and you can hit the cog and then hit enable. And then after 30 seconds, it lets you easily restart the device. So I don't know why they disabled that by default, but it's extremely useful if the device just starts acting up. Sometimes just restarting it will go ahead and fix it. The other thing is that sometimes the services have issues. So I don't have very much of my Home Assistant instance right now, so I can just restart my Home Assistant instance. or the individual services to have things kind of go back to normal. So that is the restart functionality. And then because it's a speaker, you can actually play music from your Home Assistant into the speaker of the Home Assistant Preview Edition. So one of the things that I've actually done is I've created an alarm clock through Home Assistant. And so over here, you can see that I just set the alarm time for 7:30. This is just an automation in Home Assistant. And then I have it set the media volume to a specific time or specific volume to make sure that it's not too loud. And then I have Home Assistant turn on a light switch that's also in my room. So that way it kind of helps me get stimulated from light. And then it also plays this music that's on my Home Assistant instance. So it's kind of like an automated alarm clock that is a little bit nicer for me than making sure that my phone is going to give me an alarm clock that works correctly. Long story short, I've had some issues with my Samsung to where unless it's in loud mode, it will not play my alarm clocks anymore. So I do not enjoy that because even though I put it in like do not disturb and other things, I just don't want to have to be concerned about it. All right, and then the last thing is that you can actually change the color of the wheel that's in the center. I typically do more of a purple. All you have to do is push down the center button and turn this turnstile wheel and it changes the color. So those are a few of the extras that I've got. So these are kind of pros and cons with this specific deployment, which means it's all local. As you saw, there were a few different deployment options. Makes it a little bit easier if you use something like Home Assistant Cloud or local focused. But this is the demo. So nice thing is that it's all local and then it integrates with Home Assistant. It lets you actually choose which entities you want to expose to Home Assistant through the Assist platform. And so you don't have to expose everything. So for example, I have an alarm system that I don't want this touching at all yet until it gets to be a little bit better. So I do not expose that. So you can choose what is exposed. You can set a custom wake word. And that lets you choose instead of the word that I chose. And if I say it, it's going to yell at me. You can set it to whatever. So hey Odyssey 2000 or hey Ash from Pokemon. So let's see. So the external is actually modifiable. There are people that have 3D printed. Well, come back here. They have 3D printed cases for it. Oh, come on. And now that I'm trying to click it, it's not working. All right, well, I'll make sure that link is working later. But they 3D printed cases for it, and one of the cases that they chose is a Pokemon ball. And so the top is like red and the bottom is white. And so you can 3D print the case for it, so it's more customized. And there's a community out there since it's an open spec. The cons is that it is still a preview edition. So it does get periodically buggy, and you have LLMs as your consistency. So sometimes it'll work, sometimes you'll say the exact same command, sometimes it won't. But it's gotten a lot better, and as the LLMs improve and all of these integrations continue to improve, it'll get better over time. But it's been pretty good so far. And then, all right, are there any questions? I think we're almost at time. So I got mine through cloudfree.shop. And I think it was 60, maybe it was 50. Yeah, 60. So you can buy it for $60. So a lot more affordable than the original Mycrofts, which is why I was able to afford it.
I was trying to understand the beginning of the stack. It's all OS, or is some of it proprietary? Is any of it proprietary?
Nope,
Any
all of
stack?
it's FOSS.
Okay.
Specifically, and I've got it linked in a link to the blog post that I have here. Oh, that link works. But it's using all local models and all FOSS projects. And then I think there was one question over here.
Can you do anything with performance-wise, like the speed? Is that mainly hardware-based, or is that like what we saw is kind of what you get, or?
Yeah, for right now, because Whisper CPP doesn't have the GPU support, it's kind of what we get. But once the NVIDIA support for Whisper can also come, that can also be accelerated with GPUs. So right now it's kind of bottlenecked at the CPU. All right, I think that's everything. These are the links if you want to learn more. I linked all of the blog post information, or all the information in the blog post, including a link to the slides, which is here. So that's everything. Awesome. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.